Welcome to CS Week Marketplace webinar series. CS Week Marketplace offers fresh perspectives and strategies presented monthly by knowledge specialists from the Conference 39 Platinum and Gold sponsors. I'm Lisa Collins with CS Week, and I will be your moderator today. Mark your calendars for CS Week and Conference 40, which will be held April 25th through the 29th, 2016, at the Phoenix Convention Center in Phoenix, Arizona. Watch your email and our social media channels for the registration information. This program will be recorded and available for playback along with our other archived presentations later this afternoon. You will find it by selecting Marketplace under the Webinars drop-down menu on the csweek.org homepage. Attendees are encouraged to upload questions to the Q&A panel as they arise. However, all questions will be held until after the presentation for the Q&A segment. Please ensure that you address your questions to all panelists so that we may all see them. Today's webinar is the New Age of CIS Replacement Risk Mitigation. Our presenters today are Alec O'Brien, Vice President of TMG Consulting, and Vanessa Edmonds, Vice President of TMG Consulting. Your moderator will be Mark Hall, Director of Research and Strategy at TMG Consulting. Welcome, Alec, Vanessa, and Mark, and thank you for joining us today.
All right, thank you for the introduction, Lisa. We're all glad to be here today. First, I would like to orient everybody through the agenda for today's presentation. We'll be discussing our latest research, CIS planning risk mitigation, CIS procurement risk mitigation, and then we'll look ahead and offer up some insights into future CIS trends and go over some of TMG's upcoming research. Next, I would like to introduce two of my colleagues who will be presenting, Vanessa and Alec. Vanessa serves as the General Manager of RIM Solutions, a wholly owned subsidiary of TMG Consulting, which provides deep dive utility industry research and strategic advisory services around the best ways to leverage findings. Vanessa also contributes to the overall corporate strategy. With 20 years as a business-to-business strategic marketer, Vanessa is known for her outstanding ability to advance businesses by building on their value proposition over time. Vanessa, who founded RIM in December 2013, joined TMG as a partner when RIM's research and strategy practice was purchased in October of last year. And prior to founding RIM, Vanessa served in strategic marketing roles at Itinerus North America, Chartwell, and UPS. Alec has more than 20 years of experience with customer information and billing solutions within many vertical markets, including 13 years working with utilities. He offers his clients extensive experience in business requirements definition, solution design, change management, business process analysis, and project management. Alec has led application assessment, project quality assurance, and software selection efforts at several investor-owned utilities, ranging in size from 750,000 to 2.2 million accounts. And now, talk to you a little bit about TMG Consulting. We are an unbiased utility business and IT advisory firm and have delivered on more than 400 engagements with 250 IOUs and public utilities. We provide research, IT planning, selection, client-side delivery support, and post-implementation support for CIS, automated dispatch and mobile data, work management, AMI, and MDM. And you can learn more about our research services by going to our research division website. Back up here a second. www.rimsolutions.net, as well as our product and service directory at www.utilitymarketconnections.com. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn the call over to Vanessa and Alec.
To have him moderating today's call. What we're going to talk about, I'm going to start with the key learning outcomes, what you're going to learn on today's call. We're going to give you a snapshot of current CIS in place at North American utilities and the problems with these systems. We're going to learn about key factors that are putting strain on the CIS and really sort of changing sort of the historical perspective of how we think of the CIS. We're going to understand the requirements of today's CIS. We're going to learn about the leading risks and risk mitigation measures related to the planning and procurement phases of replacing the CIS. We're going to receive information about the current market for CIS replacement, and then we're going to talk about the future of CIS. We've got some people who really have a good eye into sort of what's coming up next. And then we're going to talk to you about some upcoming research that is free to you and you can download. Our research methodology. So we have conducted surveys in August 2014, August 2015, and October 2015. And that's our primary research. We have 213 unique utility respondents who have participated. I also would like to note that we currently have our final survey open, and if you're a utility, we would love for you to weigh in on that, and we'll provide a link at the end of the presentation. We also, where a lot of research firms go out and they know by asking, we also know by doing. So the research that we conduct, we use actual data from our projects, which as Mark mentioned is more than 400 at 250 utilities. And anything that we publish, our consultants who are working at utilities every day weigh in on it and say, is this really, accurate with what we're seeing as well. We also bolstered our research by talking to industry experts, and we're very, very thankful to these companies that have participated. EY has been a huge help, Harris Northstar, Harris Systems and Software, HCL Technologies, Itinerus, which offers UMAC, Oracle Utilities, PwC, Red Clay Consulting, of course TMG, which is us, and then Vertex One. We also have looked at secondary research on CIS risks from Navigant, Forrester, Energy Central, and ISG. In terms of those utilities that weighed in on our research, our survey respondent profile looks a bit like this. So as you can see here, we've got 45% from IOUs, we've got a little over 30% from municipalities, a little over 10% from cooperatives, and we've got a little over 10% from federal, CUDs, and other. Current system overview. So from those utilities that we talked to, 34% are owners of Oracle Customer Care and Billing. We've got the next largest is the custom developed. Accenture, Harris, which is the Kayenta product, SAP, and Vertex ECIS. We asked them about their satisfaction levels with their current CIS and in the areas that they're most satisfied and the least satisfied. So you can see here our smiley face. They're most satisfied with their current system's ability to support growth and the cost to maintain their system. You can see here that they're least satisfied with the ease of integration with other applications and processes, which Alec is going to address in a bit, with their ability to modify the system to support changing business requirements, and their ease of modification. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Alec. And Alec, when you're ready, you just tell me to progress to the next slide.
Thanks so much, Vanessa. Appreciate it. Again, if we look at the difference between CIS in the 90s and today, things are dramatically different. The utility market is more mature. Our focus on customers is more mature. I at one point thought I was more mature until my wife corrected me and told me that actually wasn't any more mature than I was when we first met in the 90s. But our relationship with our customers have changed, and our demands on our CIS systems have changed. In the 90s, we were looking at getting bills out the door correctly, doing calculations correctly, getting payments in the door, basic blocking and tackling. And we wanted a CIS system that could meet those basic, straightforward requirements. Again, we were also just doing basic blocking and tackling. We were, the data models that we had were old. We didn't necessarily know where to put a phone number. Was a phone number something having to do with our customer or an account or a premise? So we moved past that. What also happened in that time period? We were preparing for Y2K. There were, in the investor-owned space, for a bunch of mergers and acquisitions. In the late part, there was the desire, especially as we moved in the 2000s, is to get off mainframe systems, and some utilities were able to do that successfully, and also to get into something which resembled more of a kind of a client-server thing. Fast forward now, 2016. Again, as we look back to what our requirements were before a long time ago, things have dramatically changed. Our rates are probably far more complex than they had been before. We have or want the ability to have a web portal where a customer can come in and do everything themselves. Not only do we want it, because again, it allows the customer to do it, the customers want it themselves. We've got distributed generation out there, so we're having to not only account for what the customer uses from the energy that we put on the grid or so, but the energy that the customer is putting back on the grid. On top of all that, again, all the capabilities that we're getting from Smart Grid, all of the things that we can do with, that we have to do to drive demand response and greater energy efficiencies. The thing is, we've probably got more systems in our universe now than we did several years ago. So the integrations we want to have between these systems, we want them to be a heck of a lot easier than they are, and there are some systems that are allowing us to do that. We're also looking to do, again, better analytics, so we want better data extraction out of the core CIS, and also, again, very few organizations, 25 years ago had a VP of customer experience. Now customer experience is all that we're talking about. We want customers to have the best experience, and so we're really looking to streamline those different ways that the customers approach us. Go ahead and move on, Vanessa.
Okay, so I was going to cover this briefly. So just to let you know, our research, we've broken it down into 4 parts. And so the first is on CIS replacement related to the planning phase. The next is on procurement, and both of those papers are available today. The one we're working on right now is implementation, and then we're going to conclude with stabilization. And so what Alec is going to discuss next is he is going to talk about the risk and risk mitigation activities with planning and procurement. And just to address this slide, oh, go ahead.
No, go.
Okay, so this slide is the planning risk mitigation. Arguably a lot of people will say that the planning phase is the very most important because it sets the stage for a successful replacement. And it's interesting that from our survey respondents, the risks that they said became problems during their project, 4 of them actually could have been mitigated with better planning. Okay, Alec, I'm turning this back over to you.
Absolutely perfect. Thank you so much, Vanessa. Again, what we'd like to do is run through, and again, probably the reason that why you're dialing into this call today is just to get some ideas of, again, what are the risks that we can be faced with both in planning at some point to do something major with our customer information systems, and then the second part, when we're actually going out into the marketplace and procuring some system and some services, what are the risks that are out there and what are ways we can mitigate them? As Vanessa already told you, the next steps go into how we can mitigate risks while we're actually implementing systems, and then on the value realization on the back end. But let's first talk about one of the first things we do, business case. Many times our business case, we look at the risk size, are inadequate because we're not counting all the costs. We're not counting one huge potential cost, which is additional staff that we would onboard in case of again, training, so we can train our other staff members to keep the phones active, keep customers happy, backfilling key staff that go from the business to the project, and then also people we might want to onboard due to again, our efficiency is going to be less when we go live. So again, that was one huge reason, and our respondents were saying a lot of times that was never accounted for in the business case. Also, too, again, when we're planning to make sure that we budget appropriately for organizational change management. Huge amounts of people coming out and saying change management was done very lightly, change management was an afterthought, that the vendor that they work with didn't really put in a good change management plan. Really going through and working with people on to ensure that that we've got appropriate change management during the whole project and even after the project. Again, part of change management is resistance, and it's appropriately setting expectations and making sure that we get all the departments of the utility on board with this massive change we're doing. And also data cleansing too, looking at early opportunities to clean up data and cleaning them up during the project so that when you do your final conversion, the data you get on the back end is pretty good. Mitigations here are, again, making sure you budget for, making sure you hire a vendor that has a solid change management practice, having a budget and a plan for backfilling key staff, going to all the departments across the organization and getting buy-in, doing change management actually through the planning stages, and then also looking at data and business process inefficiencies early so you have an eye that you can correct that potentially during the project. Next slide, Vanessa, if you wouldn't mind. Budget. In fact, I referred to it briefly in the slide before. What are the risks that we're running into? What do we see frequently? What are the complaints that you have heard from either other people at your utility or the utilities that you've met with at conventions or something else. What do we always hear? CIS programs go over budget. We didn't have a big enough budget going in. And we went over budget because we had to hire extra staff, but we didn't think we had to at the beginning. Again, these are risks that can be mitigated on the front end, way before procurement, in a planning process to go through and, again, make sure that you're putting your best and brightest. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But the best people from the utility on the project, but you also get adequate staff, whether it's from the software vendor or some other services people that you have an adequate staff, but that really means then paying attention to the published metrics of how much these projects cost and budgeting sufficiently for that. Also, again, we need to make sure on the project it's not just an IT project. We've got folks from the marketing department. We've got folks from customer care. We've got folks from the field. And we've got folks from accounting inside to make this go right. Because, again, if we're not pulling those people into the project, our project's going to be less successful. Next slide, if you wouldn't mind, Vanessa, and thank you. Again, looking at one of the risks is actually just handling risks. A lot of times in the planning process, even before we get to a procurement, we're not looking at really what the risks are. And again, when we looked at this research and the respondents came back, one is really getting a clear idea of requirements, a clear idea of what the needs are, what change needs to occur, making sure that we take the procurement process, but really align what we're asking any vendor to give us that's aligned with what the business goals are of the organization, whether it's an investor-owned utility or even a municipal utility. What are the goals for going through this massive change? Ability for the organization itself to change, the ability for the utility itself to support the product moving forward. How mature is any one particular product, software product out there? How mature is it? How bought in is the industry into it? Is this something that's just kind of shown up on the doorstep of North America, or does this product have some track record here? In addition to that, the idea to be able to get some kind of staffing from either the software vendor or the integration firms and having their top team, and then also making sure that whatever vendor staff are on our property, that they kind of fit with us, that there's a cultural fit there, that we can get along with people, and because there's so many times where the staff that come on site, there's some kind of mismatch, and we're not able to hear each other, and the vendor isn't able to do what we want because we can't communicate. So again, as we plan and then as we go into procurement, we need to research into, again, what vendors are going to give us what we need, what products out there are the ones that have been adopted and utilities like ours have used and are happy with. Bringing on a vendor to help doesn't hurt with all this. And then establishing both a good risk log so we can tick and mitigate risks off as we go along. Vanessa, next slide if you wouldn't mind. Resources, and maybe the most important thing that we can do as a utility in starting the planning process to approach a CIS implementation is getting the right team of both internal utility employees and also external people. Way too often do we hear people saying that we didn't put enough people from the utility on the project, or we didn't put the right people. We put the people it was easy enough for the business to live without, as opposed to the people that the business couldn't live without but decided to anyway. Our best people. Again, another one too, you see that second bullet under the top 5 risks. That we had people on the project that then left, whether it be on our side, the utility side, or the vendor side. Again, so we've got a lot of continuity built up, and boom, that continuity is lost, and this person either goes back to the business or leaves the project altogether. Again, well, it's very key for us to set the right expectations with the staff about all the work that's involved, how long they're going to have to be involved, and therefore as well make sure that we've done a good job budgeting or so that we don't have funding shortfalls. We're not constantly going back to either a board or a council or whatever and asking for more funding because we didn't put our best and brightest on here and the project's taking longer. Mitigation, pretty darn simple here. we need to find the best people in our organization, put them on the project, and we need to put more people on the project than we think we should. Plus, we need people to think out of the box. You'll see the words view the project holistically. We need to have people that think across the entire meter to cash and even pre-meter cash processes so that they can really have the whole picture when they come and design this new system. Go ahead, Vanessa, if you wouldn't mind. Huge thing, and that you've heard of when you've talked to people about how CIS projects have fared, is scope management. In scope, again, from an IT perspective, the word is what types of things are we going to be building as part of the system, but it goes far much more than that. A lot of that is around expectations. Projects that are actually very successful can be thought of as being unsuccessful because the expectation around them were much higher than what the project was planning to deliver. So again, as we're in this planning stages, we need to get our own expectations in line and then make sure that we vet our expectations with the other departments in the utility just to make sure that, again, everybody's on the same page when it talks about expectations. And the other thing, too, again, is potentially taking too much on at one time. With the stimulus money that was available earlier in the decade or at the beginning of the current administration, there were utilities that were able to, they got funding to be able to replace a whole bunch of systems at once. And again, bit off more than they can chew, and then what happened was there wasn't any organizational focus on any one system. Again, if I were going into the hospital and having my heart operated on, chances are I'd probably push back just a little if the surgeon said, oh, we also want to replace your knee. No, let's just focus on the heart. The heart's very important. CIS is very important to utility. Why don't we focus at one thing at a time and maximize our chances to succeed at any one thing now. But again, the mitigation on expectations is really go around and get solid expectations from every department within the organization. What is it that you really want to see change between now and the end of the program? And what is it that you want to see now between now and the end of this particular project to appropriately set expectations about what we can change during any one project? Next slide, Vanessa, if possible. We're going to do a deep dive on the procurement approach and some risks around there. But again, since we're talking on the planning side, which happens before procurement, we're kind of a little bit higher level here. So again, what do we see as risks here? Again, inappropriate decision making, a disorganized approach to the procurement. And again, procurement for us is a fancy word for going out and buying software and then the services you need to implement the software. But again, what have you heard now, a theme over several slides is unclear expectations. Really what we're looking for if you're going to go forward to a procurement is as you're facing one or more RFPs to really go in and have clear expectations as to the number of vendors that are going to be in play, and there are all kinds of people in the industry that you can ask for assistance on this. How many contracts you're going to be having moving forward, because depending on how you do this, you could be signing, the 4, 5, 6 contracts at any one time with different parties when you're doing the procurement. Again, who am I buying the software from? Who am I buying the services from? Who do I have strategic relationships with right now? And who might be looking to buy other software from in the future? So again, there may be a case that if you have, a few packages from one vendor already, it may make sense moving forward to kind of stick with that vendor as opposed to having, products from a whole bunch of different vendors moving forward when it comes to ease of integration and things like that. Vanessa, if you could. Huge issue is prioritization. Again, when I talk to my kids about what they want everything and they want it all now. As we get older, we're able to prioritize what it is that we want. As we're going in and doing RFPs, as we're going in and building our requirements, it's really, really key for us to be able to prioritize, to be able to again, look at one thing versus another thing. One thing that's important for us is to look at, for any one utility, whether it's right for us to do a software and services RFP at the same time, or to break that apart and do a software RFP, get that thing done, and then do a services RFP. And again, just so you know, when I say services, I mean the services that might one would use in order to implement that software. Some packages, some CISs are implemented by the company that sells the software, and so you wouldn't have two different parties, and you'd want to put out one RFP. But for some of the larger utilities, especially in the investor-owned space, you might look to deciding whether you want to do a single RFP that gives you an entire solution, which is a combination of a product vendor and a services vendor, or focus a lot of time in getting a product decision, which is the right decision, and then after that, then focus on the solution integrators that implement that product and focus and then doing a deep dive on them. What that allows you to do is kind of bifurcate resource. It allows you not to kind of mix things up, to focus on one decision versus another decision and kind of reduce variables. Shameless plug-in here, again, there are firms that help clients through this, TMG being one of them, but to reach out to a firm that you're comfortable with, that you have some kind of relationship, and then have someone help walk you through this process. The software vendor, and just like right now, again, if you look at the software that you have in your utility, you've probably had it for a while, you're going to have a multi-year, probably multi-decade relationship with whatever software vendor you choose. So again, be careful and then look to kind of make some kind of strategic partnership with that firm moving forward. By breaking it up, we believe, by breaking the software and the services decisions up, we believe that gives you the greatest flexibility from a procurement leverage perspective to get competitive pricing on both the services and the license costs. Vanessa, next slide, please. And the last slide in this group is really kind of looking at a schedule. Again, when we did this research with utilities, what did we hear coming back so many different times were unrealistic schedules. Whether that was an unrealistic schedule that was that the utility thought that they can implement something in a far shorter amount of time than really can happen, or you had a vendor coming in and kind of with a whole bunch of promises that it would only take them a limited amount of time to implement a product. And again, so what we're faced with are unrealistic project schedules, inadequate resourcing, we talked about that some already, and vendors that really don't have the basic system integration delivery skills to be able to execute tasks on time, to estimate how long a particular item might take, and then to track the progress and making sure that our timing estimates are on track. So again, what we're doing there is just recommending pure project management 101. We got to have resource plans, we got to have project plans. Those project plans need to be normalized. We need to have priorities in there. We've got to have resource-loaded project plans, so we're not counting on Bob to be doing 3 things at once. We can have Bob do what Bob normally does during a given day, and with all the other people on the project, we can make sure that we're getting things done. And the ability to figure out if we're, if something was supposed to take a month and we're not 25% along with it at the end of the first week, to be able to have those kind of metrics so that we can pull the fire alarm when we early enough that something is not on track. So thank you, Vanessa.
Okay, so this next section of the presentation, Alec is going to focus on the risks and the mitigation activities related to the actual procurement. And again, I did want to mention, as we noted earlier, there is a research paper on each of these 2 sections that you can download from the TMG website with more information.
Vanessa, again, thank you. And again, as you saw with that slide before, we were originally talking about what were risks, and this is based on the research we did with multiple utilities on the planning stage. But now we're moving into the second piece on what did people see, what could have been optimized, what are the risks, what were the downsides of actual software and services procurements that were done throughout time. And again, you're going to see a theme here. Again, if you look at the second bullet here for kind of needs identification and requirements, unclear expectations. The utility went into a replacement without a clear understanding of what it is that they want it to do. Again, you're going to be spending, no matter how large the utility is, you're going to be spending hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars here. And again, it's incumbent upon all of us, it's exceedingly critical for us to know why we're doing any one particular thing. Again, it's the top bullet is, again, lack of context. Why are we making the change? What's pushing us? What's critical? What's really critical here? So again, number one, we need to, before we go down this road, clearly identify why we're doing this, both from an internal perspective and also an external perspective, our customers. And then make sure that we're driving that change. Yes, you can change technology, but if we're not changing our people and if we're not changing our processes, it's an absolutely wasted opportunity for us to go in and make sure that our people are ready to do things in a different way and they're excited about doing this, and that we can get our customers excited as we're excited as well to change. Next slide, Vanessa, if you wouldn't mind. Again, specifically around procurement, what we heard from the respondents was that, again, the RFP process may have had issues too. And one is that they picked a solution, but it didn't actually provide the functionality across the organization that they required. And there were some really costly customizations and customizations that then hampered upgrades and things like that as well. So again, during the RFP process, and really less in the drafting of the RFP, but if we're going through the procurement process, again, we really need to figure out what it is, what's the functionality that the entire organization is looking for, and then check the box, how much of that is delivered by any one piece of software out of the box versus what we would have to do some kind of software modification or enhancement to perform. Again, as we talked about before when we talked about prioritization, really make sure that we weight our requirements based on importance. It's very important to us, both before the procurement, during the procurement, and after the procurement, because if we need to change some things we need moving forward, we need to know the difference to the drop-dead things that I have to have, those things that I kind of need to have, and those things that would be just nice to have. Very important to know the difference between the two so we don't spend millions and millions and millions of dollars delivering something that nobody really super wanted, but everybody thought it would be a cool thing to have if it came already with the package. Again, as you can see in here, we need to make sure that no one department is driving this whole procurement process. We need to have buy-in from anybody. Again, if you get through the procurement, you select software, you select some kind of services vendor, and you've left one department out of this, that's the department that will be complaining not only through the implementation, but also after implementation. So it's really wise to get representation from all across the utility as you're making these important procurement decisions, and really determine and have a guiding principle going into this. Do you want a system that has a whole bunch of custom software that your IT department is going to have to maintain for the next 20, 30 years? Or are you looking to kind of change how you're doing business and really use the software the way it was written, which means you'll have far less to maintain yourself and put that burden than on a software company that writes software for a living. Next slide, Vanessa, please. Evaluation. The RFP evaluation is key, and one thing I would tell anybody, whether you're using kind of an external vendor like TMG or doing kind of the procurement yourself, come up with, as you're drafting your RFP, come up with the evaluation process at the exact same time and have that nailed down such that no one could accuse you on the back end of ever doing anything like tweaking your evaluation process to kind of match the skills of one vendor versus another. But we need to go in and we need to make sure we're scoring and we have good numeric provable responses on all the different things that we find important. So again, we need to look at specific requirements and need to make sure that we weight them appropriately as to their importance. We need to make sure that as we're comparing pricing and so many other things and modules that we are comparing apples to apples. And there are ways that you can do this, especially on the pricing side, to make sure you're getting all the pricing in and then figuring out what's optional, what are optional services and what are very necessary services. And again, the different vendors can present things in different ways. And so therefore, it's very appropriate in your RFP process to have them answer all in a common way so you can really compare answers to each other and then evaluate them and come up with a comparable score, a numeric score that you can then go back to your board, your council, your commission and said, we chose these vendors over these vendors because, as you can see with the way we evaluated, we had these vendors had much higher numeric scores. And again, there are ways to do that with templates and different things. One really key note is on the business process side, as you see on the right side, mitigation on slide 36. We need to make sure that we expose key business processes to these vendors, especially our business processes that are different from other utilities of the services that we provide, the size we provide, and the jurisdiction that we're in. If we've got a process that for whatever reason is really, really different, if we can communicate this process to the vendors that are in the community, they have a much better opportunity to price that into to their bids and then come back with a much better understanding, and then we get rid of that opportunity, the opportunity for months down the road, oh, I didn't know you did it that way. So again, whatever we can do in our business process-wise and expose that, especially on the one-off processes that we have, very, very helpful. Vanessa, next slide, if you wouldn't mind. Contract negotiations, very, very key. One thing that that you'll see is that if we have inappropriate expectations on the front end as opposed to, of what benefits we're going to get, including return on investment, that might come into play here. Also, if we don't appropriately judge the system and the lifespan of the system, you're seeing the marketplace look at maybe 10-year spends and amortizing the asset somewhere over 10 years. In fact, a recent utility went to approach their commission and was told that they could expect an 11-year life of that asset, at least when it came to depreciation. So again, that's very key, understanding what the industry is doing when it comes in terms of, especially for those of you that are regulated utilities and looking to depreciate an asset over a certain amount of time. Again, we just need to make sure too that as we're doing these contract negotiations, we have some idea of how these different vendors have responded to prior utilities, and make sure that we're not getting terms from these utilities that are far more stringent and far more difficult for us as a utility than what they've given other utilities in the past. And so again, it's always helpful to have someone around that maybe has negotiated with these vendors before and can kind of tell you to a certain extent what terms they've agreed to in the past, what they're willing to do, and then make sure we have the right contracts in place and in the right things working out in the right documents. So that's it on that slide, Vanessa.
Thank you, Alec. That is very good content. And I think, our point here is that if you know what's ahead, you don't have to fear it. Sun Tzu, who wrote The Art of War, said, if you know your enemy, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. And so I think it's, really being aware of what the risks are, and it makes it a lot less scary to replace your system. Would you agree with that, Alec?
Oh, without a doubt.
Okay. All right, so what I want to do now is cover the CIS replacement market, and then Alec is going to talk about a future outlook, which is some really cool content we came up with. So in terms of the market, and this is both from secondary research and from what utilities told us, there's going to be a steady replacement of older systems. We don't expect to see a sudden burst of replacements, and that obviously has to do with costs and business case and things like that. The market's going to grow at a compound annual rate of 6.8% between 2014 and 2023, from $2.7 billion to $4.9 billion, and we got that from Navigant. And this is actually a global estimate, so it's not just North America. And it includes initial license fees, annual maintenance fees, upgrade fees, integration, project management services fees, and software as a service managed service offerings. The European market is nearly twice the size of the North American market, and the divide is mostly due to the European market's much higher installed base of newer CISs and associated maintenance fees. And so as you can see here, we break down the replacement timeline, and you've got here that 27% are going to replace in the next 1 to 2 years. So obviously those utilities are down the path of planning for that. And then you see here 26%. Actually, this is a mistake on the slide. It should say not in the foreseeable future. So those are the two biggest pieces, and then you can see here the breakdown in terms of the 3 to 7+ years mark. And when we're looking at the replacement market, the most important attributes that utilities are saying that they're looking for in a new CIS is the core functionality, followed by the total cost of ownership, and then this ease of integration, which we're just hearing a lot about, this ease of integration with other applications and services. And now I'm going to turn it back over to you, Alex, so that you can talk to us about the future.
Really important areas, especially where we're looking into the risk of acquiring and implementing a CIS system. Again, what are we looking at in the future? Again, as we talk to utilities, especially in the last 2 years, about what the future looks like, there are a lot of question marks above people's heads. We know we're going to be doing something different. We know the industry is changing. We know that the demand is potentially leveling off, and we have to look to different revenue streams. We're looking to, what are we going to do for different revenue streams? So one of the things that's helpful is we're looking for flexibility. We actually maybe don't know exactly how our utility is going to change, so therefore we need systems that are flexible, that are going to allow us to do different things. Second bullet, we really need to be flexible to be able to be responsive to changing things. And to me, the biggest thing is changing business needs, the market, and then customer expectation. Our customer expectations are growing exponentially, and you guys know that far better than me because you're dealing with that every single day. Again, our businesses are changing too. So our company leadership is going to come to us and ask us to do things we haven't done, or we haven't done in a while, like selling products and services or so. And again, we're going to have to be able to adapt our system to do that. So therefore, we need flexible systems to allow us to maybe engage in lines of business that we've never done before, or we haven't done in a very long time. Again, omni-channel is huge to be able to, with a single set of systems, be able to track customer interactions, whether it's coming in from a web chat or a question posted on a website, or an email that we've gotten, or a phone call, or a text, or whatever, be able to manage all of that and have it in one place so we can tell all the different ways one particular customer's tried to work with us. Ease of integration is huge. You heard us talk about that before. No matter what happens, we're going to live in a world where we have multiple systems moving forward, and we want easy ways to link up the systems. And again, thanks to, you've heard of, service-oriented architecture, so services being developed by these different firms. We have easier ways to integrate them, and really that's one of the things we should be evaluating any software that we buy moving forward is how easy is it, how many services are out there that would kind of make it much more easy to plug and play these different systems together. Very, very important. Again, if we're going to do this right, the most successful CIS implementations that we've seen, especially recently, but even going back into history, were done where the business was actually, the utility business was actually determining what the change was, and IT people then found a way to make that happen, as opposed to IT trying to push the change. We're looking for the business to kind of tell IT what it is that we want, and then have IT be a service provider, just as we are as a utility to our community, is to, again, provide service back to the business in terms of functions and features. What's changing? Again, analytics is changing, so we need a much better platform in order to be able to do analytics and calculate things in a much quicker way. Again, we want our technology to be adaptive and kind of learn itself as opposed to us making it learn. One of the trends that so many of us are seeing right now is where certain things that had always been in CIS are now moving to other systems, and one of which is kind of high-low meter reading exceptions, a whole bunch of stuff like that, kind of migrating now into what is now becoming the system of record for meter reads and consumption, which is the MDM, and then watching that change go through as these MDM systems become more and more mature. Again, distributed generation, people putting stuff on the grid, us paying them at a rate which may be totally different than the rate we're charging them for the energy that they use from us. And again, being able to have those two things net out appropriately. Prepay, a big driver, many utilities getting into right now. Enterprise sharing of data, again, that analytics or data lakes where we can just put data out there and then let other consumers inside the organization kind of use that data as they see fit. And then smart grid and a whole bunch of other things, again, electric vehicles, all the stuff that you're familiar with that we've got to be prepared to accommodate kind of in the CIS world. Also, again, all the different ways that we talk about data extractions, but all the different ways that people are going to interact with us, including different portals, both inside the organization, outside the organization, mobility, the ability for them to, on their phone or maybe even on some kind of watch, kind of interact with some systems, hugely important. If you could flip the slide, Vanessa, that'd be great. And then just finishing up here, we're looking to go beyond, to go past on time and on budget. On time and on budget is huge. Again, many of us have based our careers on delivering something within the time we promised it and with only the resources that were allocated to it. But so much more is now on the realization of benefits. If we go out there and promise X, Y, and Z, whether it's from a functional perspective or from a return on investment perspective, that we're held accountable and we can deliver that and we can prove that back to the organization. Again, and so that makes these business cases far important because the business case is going to have to hold up throughout the implementation and afterwards for the life of the project to actually deliver the benefits that kind of we've promised to the organization. And again, we're looking at less implementing technology and more innovating and more delivering value to our customers and delivering value to our shareholders. One thing we talked about earlier in this is that we see value in many cases of kind of selecting the software first and then selecting the services vendor second. Doesn't fit every single opportunity, but again, in many opportunities it does, and we kind of want to highlight that. Also, there are a whole bunch of stuff you can do before that RFP goes out, and maybe a whole bunch of stuff you should do before the RFP goes out. And again, some of that is around data quality, what the quality is of your data, doing kind of as-is business process work, kind of harmonizing your integration, coming up with a simpler integration procedure. Again, looking at those quote-unquote edge systems or systems that can contribute and making sure that you've accounted for them and you're going to be accounting for them in your RFPs moving forward. And again, also just so much more on bringing value. We as a utility are probably going to be less interested in pushing a certain amount of CCF or KWH and be much more there in what we can provide to the community. So we're going to actually be focusing more on our role as a distributor and less on the commodity itself, and really being a trusted partner, a trusted provider, whether it's energy or of water or whatever it is that we're providing the community, and kind of being comfortable with that role as that trusted partner. So that's all I have. And Vanessa, thank you very much for the opportunity to kind of speak on some of these items.
Okay, so I wanted to just mention a few things before we turn it back over to Mark, who's going to moderate the Q&A. The first one is TMG is going to be presenting at the CS Week Vendor Showcase. We're big supporters of CS Week, and we're going to be presenting the total research, so really the highlights from all 4 pieces. The third paper is coming out at the end of February. Again, you can go to www.tmgconsulting.com, go to Research Services. There's a tab for Research Services. If you scroll to the bottom, you'll see links to the research. Other things that I wanted to let you know is that we have a newsletter called TMG Trending. It comes out once a month, and if you go to the articles section on the website, you can register for that, and you're going to get articles about the research. It's really thought leadership. It's not a sales piece. The other thing I wanted to let you know is that if you're interested in participating in the 3rd and 4th paper, either if you're a utility and you really want to weigh in, or if you're a solution provider who has not yet participated in the first 2, we would love to have your input. So please email me directly at vanessa.edmonds@tmgconsulting.com. And the final thing that I wanted to let you know is that in addition to this commissioned research, which we offer as just a service to the industry, I'm sorry, not commissioned, in addition to this market research, we also do commissioned research. So we just finished studies for SMUD and for Southern Company and for quite a few vendors. So I just wanted to let you know about those resources. And now I'm going to turn it over to Mark Hall.
All right, thank you, Vanessa and Alec. Extremely interesting set of topics discussed today. And while we wait for members of the audience to ask some questions in the queue, we already do have several. I'm going to address a couple of the questions myself and just give Alec and Vanessa a moment to catch their breath, especially Alec. One of the questions that we were asked is if utilities have they given us or we've done any research about views towards a hosted CIS solution versus on-premise? And we actually are closing out a research project on that very topic, and we're looking to hopefully be divulging the results from that next month. The next question, and then I hope you guys have had a chance to get your breath back, but and this question is for Alec. You discussed separating the procurement of a system integrator and a CIS vendor. Would you recommend procuring the CIS first, and if so, why?
And again, I hit on this a little bit in the presentation as well, but there's definitely an argument to be made for getting all our requirements together, what we want out of a set of software, going out to the market, and then looking at all the options that are available to me of a utility of my size and my complexity, and then picking a system that is right, the one that will fit my requirements, and then shifting over, and depending on the size of the system or the size of the project, figuring out what other firms might be out there to help me implement. You know, if I'm looking at, if I'm a customer with, if I'm a utility with, maybe 100,000 or so meters, there are multiple systems out there that can potentially fit the bill. Vet that one, get it right, and likely in those cases, the vendor is actually going to be the one to help you implement. So there's no need to go through some kind of secondary process necessarily, although there are firms that can help kind of do different services as well, and maybe one wants to put out an RFP for that. Again, let's go to another maybe extreme. If your utility 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 million customers, there are much fewer options when it comes to software. So maybe it's going through a deep dive, picking up the software that's right for you, and then you can switch and focus on the vendors that focus on that software, because many vendors only focus on one brand of software. And so therefore, it just gives you a little bit of clarity. It gives you the opportunity to kind of totally focus on one and totally focus on another. Then again, there are arguments on the other side too, and there are utilities that have decided to go in the other direction, and those are fine decisions as well. Did I answer your question?
Yes, thanks, Alec.
Hey, this is Vanessa. Can I weigh in on that as well? I wanted to share that this topic was very highly debated actually in our white paper from the different experts that we talked to. And so we actually have an article that in our newsletter that just came out on this topic, but also I encourage you to download the white paper, because in the fairness of research, we obviously have our perspective at TMG, but there's a lot of other perspectives out there that we represented as well.
All right. Thanks, guys. Next question I have coming from the audience. Please explain what you meant by data cleansing before and during a CIS project.
Beautiful question. The data cleansing, again, we tend to find, the time we tend to find inadequate data, whether, widow-orphan type parent-child relationships and, orphan data records or just bad data, is when we do the conversion, is when we convert from system A to system B. That anything we can do on the front end, and again, what are the most common ones? Bad addresses, address data that we've had in the system for years that maybe are poor addresses, maybe the ability to consolidate two people of the exact same name. I was meeting with somebody that had 2 accounts with a utility employee, had 2 accounts with the utility because of one home and then like a kind of a vacation spot. And it was the same person with the same Social Security number, but the utility, his own utility, had yet to catch the fact that his name was misspelled for one of the 2. And he liked it that way so he could tell which was which bill. Again, different things like that where we can opportunities where our data really doesn't match, and maybe due to a prior conversion, we've got actually bad data in the system. And we can do things using tools, using, on the front end to make sure that we catch those things maybe even before a project and get them cleaned up so that by the time you start to replace a project, your data is much more clean and the project's going to go much more easily. I don't know if I answered your question or not, but that's my response.
All right. Thank you, Alec. Next question, also from the audience, and we can all address this, but does TMG get involved with projects beyond planning and procurement, i.e. program management during the implementation phase?
We can. It's a set of services we offer. The TMG has in the past also done certain things to help the utility through, not necessarily to replace work that any one vendor in the space might do, like the implementation vendor, not taking that role away, but being able to just provide support to the utilities and doing certain things. And one of the things that one of the areas where we can provide support is project management and then overall program management as well. Some key people that are just darn good project management folks and program management folks to come in and make sure that even though the vendor has a project manager and they're kind of looking at the project and ticking off boxes from in covering their interests, that we can do that from the utility side, make sure the utility interests are being met as well and all the tasks are being handled adequately.
Okay. All right, and I think we have time for one more question, and this also comes from the audience. You mentioned a shift to benefits realization approach rather than on time and on budget. Is there any difference on how benefits realization is embraced by IOUs versus public entities like municipal utilities?
Excellent question. I'll take a crack at it. Vanessa, I don't know if you want to take a crack as well. Again, a lot of times when we're in the IOU space, the investor-owned utility space, we're looking at hard dollars, we're looking at savings, we're looking at the ability to provide some kind of, maybe it's efficiencies or so. So that is potentially unique to the investor-owned side. No matter what side we're on, whether on the municipal or public power side or the investor-owned, our commissions, our boards, our councils are all focused on, again, customer satisfaction, delivering value to the customer. That's why we're there in the first place, right, to provide some set of services and products to the community in which we're in. So a lot of that really then is looking at specific benefits, especially benefits that we have promised to the customer and how well we've delivered on those. So I'd say the only difference maybe is we look at more from a dollar perspective on the investor-owned side, but on both sides we're really, really drilling down into where's the customer benefit that this technology change has allowed us to provide our customers.
Okay. Well, thank you again, Alec and Vanessa, as well as the folks at CS Week. We appreciate the opportunity today to present, and hopefully the audience members got a lot out of the excellent information that Alec and Vanessa brought forward. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to the folks at CS Week.
Well, thank you, Mark. And I agree, that was a very informative presentation. We're very glad that Alec and Vanessa were able to join us, as well as you. So we're near the top of the hour, and I want to be respectful and conclude promptly. If your question was not answered, or if you think of a follow-up question, you can email them directly to Alec and Vanessa, and then Amber will follow up with the questions that were not addressed during the webinar to the presenters. So just a few quick notes before we sign off. Registration is now open for CS Week 2016 in Conference 40 in Phoenix. Early registration ends March 1st, so you'll want to visit csweek.org or call the CS Week office to register today. Please join us for our next CS Week Marketplace webinar, Unwritten Rules of CIS Selection, presented by AAC Utility Partners on Tuesday, February 16, 2016. You can register now on the CS Week website. And at this time, I'd like to thank Alec and Vanessa and Mark and TMG Consulting and RIM Solutions and all attendees for joining us today. Thank you.